All those in favor? Aye. Great. This PGA is adjourned. We will now resume the regular meeting with the agenda. Madam Clerk, if you call the item, first item.
First item is presentation on financial forecast policy and procedures by Mount Carmel, Director of Municipal Finance.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thanks.
Good evening, Mark. How are you this evening?
Thank you, Madam President. Through you to the council
Thank you.
this evening. I'm presenting to you tonight regarding recommendations, actually long-standing recommendations by our rating agencies in conjunction with our investment bankers. The mayor also asked me to set aside a little bit of time in the course of the discussion on the policies being presented to give a little bit of history and who the players are and how they fit into the policies that are being recommended. All governmental entities utilize various credit instruments such as debt, and their issuance of bonds, bands, which are bond anticipation notes, GANs, which are grant anticipation notes, and regular notes such as treasury notes, more often identified at the federal level. The debt is used to spread the cost of financing capital assets over the life of the asset. Schools and public buildings can be financed over 30 years or more. Equipment can be financed over the useful life of the asset. Assets such as police cars tend to do more in the 5-year range, especially in Quincy. They don't last that long, take quite a beating. Ladder trucks, much sturdier, longer life, 20 years even here in Quincy. It's sewer and drainage systems that are good for 30 or 40 years. And heavy equipment in general, it's anywhere from 5 to 15 years. You do pickup trucks for the lower range and heavier dump trucks for 15-year range. But the general goal, you understand, is to pay for the asset over the course of the useful life of the asset. It's too expensive for governments to finance the largest purchases, even going so far as buildings in any one budgetary term. Now, what are financial policies? Financial policies are the statements of guidelines and goals that will inform and guide the financial management practices of the city. They're not laws. If you don't adhere to them, if you don't follow them, nobody gets tasered. At least I hope not, because it would probably be me. But they're policies based on the best practices of municipalities. We look at the communities that have AAA ratings in Massachusetts. We look at Brookline, we look at Newton, we look at Cambridge. It's not that we think that we'll compete with them financially, but those true practices that have held up over time, and they get the gold star, so we want to emulate those. Formal policies promote long-term financial stability by establishing clear and consistent guidelines. It wouldn't be policies that we're asking you to adopt just for this administration or for any short period of time. We hope this will carry to future administrations, future councils, providing more stability for the city and its finances. Their adoption will directly help the city maintain the highest credit rating and bond rating possible. And I want to emphasize the word that it will directly affect, because these policies and procedures, as well as the forecast that will be presented, we've been told directly we need to adopt these. Last, they provide a framework for measuring the fiscal impact of government services against established benchmarks. We're measuring ourselves against the other cities and towns in Massachusetts, and some we're not as good as, but not as highly ranked. Many we are much better than. Who the players are in this market? There are four main players servicing the city in the area of these proposals. One is the rating agency. The rating agencies analyze the financial statements and the performance of the cities issuing the debt. They conduct ratings calls with the administration and the bankers prior to the issuing of the credit rating report. And I'll talk a little bit about the credit rating report in a moment. Another player are the bankers. They advise the city on financing options, timing, and overall strategies involved in the debt that we're planning on issuing. And of course, the bankers facilitate the actual sale of the instruments. Third is bond counsel. Bond counsel assists the city and the bankers in the legalities and language of the specific financing under the appropriate laws. Not uncommon to have the banks on the same call with the bond counsel and ourselves prior to issuing it. Fourth, last but not least, the independent accounting firm, in our case it's Powers and Sullivan. They conduct an annual audit, which is required by law. They issue the financial statements upon which the ratings agencies base most of their reviews based on the financial statements. So it's a full circle. The agencies are reviewing what the accountants are producing in the audit, and the bankers and bond counsel are working with the city when we're going to market. There are two main rating agencies, Moody's and Standard & Poor's. Excuse me. We're currently working with Standard & Poor's. The credit rating report and the recommendations are an important aspect of why I'm in front of you tonight. Before issuing debt, the city's financial statements are reviewed by the rating agency, and a rating call is conducted. This consists of the mayor, chief of staff, the treasurer, the assessor, city solicitor. The investment bankers are on the phone. Standard boards have usually 2 or 3 analysts, with one will play a speaking role, and myself. The calls usually last anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half. They can go longer. Everything is on the table. The agency often does go into every aspect of city financing, anything that's of interest to them, anything current, anything in the press. We discuss union contracts, we discuss development projects, housing value, vacancy statistics in office buildings, the city's unemployment figures, who are the top commercial taxpayers. We discuss stabilization funding at that level, OPEB funding, debt plans, and CIP plans. All of the policies in front of you tonight that we're asking you to endorse before the end of the session have been discussed in detail with the rating agencies in the previous 2 weeks. Not to the extent of revealing everything, but the nature of the matters that we're covering. Using the standard 4 scale, 10 possible ratings from AAA down to D, which is junk bond. Quincy is rated AA+, so that's the second highest category after AAA. So Quincy is well thought of in the marketplace. After the rating call is conducted, we usually get the rating report in about 7 to 10 days. The credit rating report, currently at AA+ and holdings, gives the investors an independent valuation of the city's bonds and allows us to gain access to lower interest rates than a riskier rating would allow us. And it's within the framework of the credit rating report that the agency makes recommendations to the city on how it can maintain or improve its status. And that's why all of our recent reports over the last couple of years have indicated we need to move forward with formal policies as well as issue financial forecasts in order to maintain the AA+ rating. We did have policies and procedures ready to go last February. Essentially what's in front of you tonight is about 95% of what I had ready to go last February. There were a few other events, late January, February, and March. The 800-pound gorilla. This was a 113-inch honorable snowman. And we thought we needed the flexibility and didn't come forth with the policies at that point in time. But now the time has come to move on and in clear discussions with the rating agencies that they want us to propose, and that's why we're in front of you tonight. The first policy has to do with the stabilization fund / free cash. The stabilization fund was established for the purpose of providing a foundation needed to one, enhance stability. Could it make more sense? Stabilization fund will enhance the stability of the city's position. And if you look at the graphic, that's a true record of how the city has done since just 2010. Stabilization fund was only $944,210. It has increased to $10.2 million with an additional appropriation approved in this budget by the council. We've been given a lot of credit for increasing the fund from where it was in 2010 to where it is now. But as you can see, it's plateaued. We need to get that upward track going again. In fact, we're insisting on it. The base target level for us to achieve is higher. It's at 5% to 6%, and this is from the rating agencies and the bankers, of the audited general fund revenue of the previous fiscal year. That number is $278 million. Thus, our target level is between 14 and 16 million stabilization / free cash. And they openly tell us we should be shooting for $20 million in stabilization. We get the added benefit of the free cash, which is a recent development for us. Usually you're just stabilization. But the city will be given credit for any free cash balances at the time of the rating or at the end of the fiscal year. Now, these funds may be used to assist the city in cyclical declines in operating revenues, recessionary periods, catastrophic weather events, supplemental funding for capital projects, etc. The primary reason to segregate the funds out of stabilization is to prevent them from being used for ongoing city needs. The use of the funds is also required, it can only be spent at the vote of the council. And the ask here is that the policy set 20% of free cash per year. The second fund, a little more direct, the OPEB Trust Fund. The trust fund already exists. It was established a few years ago. And again, we got credit for doing that. We put in a minimal amount, $1.2 million. It's not big in the scheme of things, but we added another appropriation this year, subject to your approval, which is a positive move in the right direction. And that's what the rating agencies like to see. Move towards solving the problem, don't do nothing, don't do anything. It's only the beginning. This asks also 20% of free cash. And the OPEB funding situation is not unique to Quincy. All the cities and towns in Massachusetts face it. And it's a problem. It doesn't have to be solved this year, or next year, or in 5 years, but it has to be solved in the next 30 or 40 years. The third fund is the Inclement Weather Fund. Again, it's already being used. The policy before you tonight to establish a formal policy of putting 10% of free cash into this fund. The fund would build to 50% of what the snow and ice budget is, which is obviously something that we're still increasing. Just to remind you, snow and ice budget, and if you don't have enough money for snow and ice, it can have serious impact on your operations in the following years. There's only $300,000 in 2008. We've increased it $250,000 a year with your approval of the budget to a level this year with a projection of $150,000 increase. It'll be 2.160 for the budget. So if we can add a little additional cushion for the inclement weather, it's also there for use for flooding, 27 miles of coastline or something to that, tornadoes, hurricanes, as nasty as when they can get from time to time. I even heard mentioned that we should prepare for locusts. I don't know that the weather fund could be used. I think we have to test the allowance there. I don't think it qualifies. The last policy, financial policy, is debt service and capital improvement plan. The cap here is to maintain total outstanding general fund debt service will range from 6 to 7.5%. Now, that's 1.5% higher than we've heard in previous years, and that's been raised by our investment bankers. And the prudent amount, 7.5%, more in line with, by the way, that ratio is something that BOR works with, less so than the bankers. The bankers work with the next one, which is the outstanding debt level not to exceed 2.5% of total valuation. Total valuation in Quincy is the value of all the homes, residences, businesses. And that stands at $12 billion last certified by BOR. That would have that cap, which is a key one the bankers look at, 300. Also, we're asking you to adopt what we've begun already this year, which is the city having a 5-year rolling capital improvement plan. In the past, we introduced a significant capital improvement plan in 2011 of $24.5 million. There was a lot of call in the interim years of when we were going to come out with the next capital improvement plan. Well, now it's going to be an annual. We'll roll it forward 5 years at a time. And that'll allow for the funding that he's going to be asked to look at next week. And then the following year, we'll add a second year of funding, while adding that 5th year continually. So we're always looking at that period of time. For emergency situations, obviously, you can't always predict what's going to be needed in the capital plan, so there would be a provision that should emergency repairs or emergency capitalization be required, that can be included, and would be included in the following year's plan. Finally, it asks for an endorsement that a minimum of 5% of the operating budget be dedicated to debt service. What this is the floor. It's a commitment by you that the administration is putting forward that we always have at least 5% of the operating budget going towards infrastructure and maintaining the city's most valuable assets. It's important that we get your endorsement on this. Rating agencies are frankly expecting it, hoping for it. We've been hearing about it for 2 or 3 years. First things first, we had to begin to build stabilization. We've gone a long way towards that. We had to take care of some other matters, and get our house in order, and other things that they wanted to see done. But this is clearly up next on the agenda. For the next piece, I'd like to bring up Eric Mason. Certainly.
But in terms of this, Mark, I guess, and again, I think these are really sound policies. I think many of us have talked about for a significant period of time, to really try and, it sounds, to integrate specific policies, particularly into the budget process that we use so that, you can reach these objectives. But I guess I'm a little bit confused is you've mentioned about us adopting or endorsing.
I think it's asking for a vote of endorsement of policies, accepting that the city is going to have formal policies to be followed. It's not an administrative, internal policy we try to do. It's a formal city policy.
Is that going to come back before us in the form of an order that basically lays that out specifically?
Yes, we can come back in the form of an order, absolutely.
Thank you.
I don't know if you want to roll through the presentation or entertain questions.
I'd like to get through the forecast portion of it because that was an equally important aspect that the agencies and the bankers with a rating of AA plus to go through the exercise of. I think it's the focus on the line-by-line expenditures, not only historically that's required to do the forecast, what we're doing currently, and where our current policies and procedures will take us in the future. It also melds in with the additional economic factors we've been able to build in. What's happening in housing, what's happening in employment, and some of those factors. So we can build that into the forecast. This goes back to the rating agencies. It's available for investors to look at, and it was thoroughly vetted with our CPA firm has been working on it with us for a period of time. So I'd like to have Eric approve that, and we can open it up.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sir?
Good evening, Council. Just in case someone, I know I've worked with a few of you, I just introduced myself. My name is Eric Mason. I work as an economist in municipal finance. I'm here to talk to you about forecasting, the different procedures and methodologies that become one with adopting certain policies. So the purpose of this is the rating agency. So these rating agencies are meant to grade private companies. Private companies employ a lot of econometric tools or different ways to look at numbers in order to come up with evaluations that then the rating agencies can adopt. There's a theory in economics called COVID model, no relation to any famous politician can say, that dictates that the public sector is over 20 years behind the technology of the private sector. So we're going to jump a gap and cover my lifespan in this 7-page presentation, hopefully. So what this does is allow us to look at more in-depth monitoring issues. So we're in a housing market that's going to X, and these models can actually look to see how that's happening, how that's going to affect these revenues. That's pretty interesting. Councilor Finn brought up that somebody had come up with that model to evaluate housing. That was me. He wrote the housing pricing model.
I want to know when that's coming out.
Yeah, it's but it's a genetic model based on some fancy names or whatever. But this creates benchmarks that are physical benchmarks that coincide with policies. So here's a picture of me working. We'll got to push the percent signs around. So there's two methods. One is percent based outlook. So that takes the history of the account for the last few years and sees how they'll grow in the future. It's a good method for looking 1-2 years in the future. Not a fantastic method for looking farther in the future because when things compound with interest rates, we see exponential growth. We usually don't see anything else. The other one is a regression with natural law, which is an econometric tool that looks at how do these numbers trend out in the future. So the first one is the percent basis outlook, which is all those Latin numbers and signs. Basically, you say that we look at comparing one period to the previous period, we average those out, whatever we come up with in terms of that, which is actually on the last page of the hand that I gave you. It looks at the total aggregate increase, the total increase that we'll see across any account. We add those accounts together, that's how we model out future expenditures and revenues. All right, so the other one's a little more in depth view. It's a little more robust model, and it's called regression of natural log. So if you look on the slideshow, you'll see log in its natural habitat. That's not what I'm talking about. I have a bunch of awful math jokes, and only scratching the surface. If you look at the ones to the right, that's what natural looks like scrapped out. It's called a three-dimensional Cartesian plane, which is a fancy way of showing that things change based on the sensitivity of what they're doing before. In other words, how our accounts change is partially based on how they behave in years. In this way, let's look at that behavior stretch over a very long period of time. Some people in the industry would say regressive models have very long memories. And so decisions made a long time ago before any of us were here are reflected in that very model. So anything that's happening with any economic turmoil comes back around and we see in the model again. This is just a demonstration of the benchmarking. So when we look in the future and we kind of trail backwards to look at how things were, how they are now, this is how it's done. You ever heard somebody may say something like, $20 in 1930 is $500 now. This is how it's done. It's exactly how it's done. And we're going to have that same ability to look at our performance in the future. Here are the actual nitty-gritty models. They're a little complicated looking, but it's fine. What it basically says is that revenue is going to take the CPI, which is the Consumer Pricing Index, or how we gauge inflation, for this area, our metropolitan statistical area, which is Greater Boston. And we're going to look at them and see how those sensitivities change and how that results to revenue. In addition, we're going to use a basis analysis, or looking how those percent change over time to account for future revenues, how those are calculated. And that same process is going to be applied to expenses. We'd be more than happy outside of council that you guys want to come up with municipal finance and kind of get a little more complicated with this. Yeah, it's going to be a little.
You can have a lot of line outside of your. Yeah.
So, as I concluded this hopefully brief but very boring presentation, with next steps which are results. So each model is going to yield different relationships. So they'll yield pretty close numbers, but usually going down complete different paths. So it's like if you were to drive to Stop and Shop on Southern Island, you Hancock, you go to Bergen, that's not pronounced, to Southern Island, or you come from the wall to Hampton, from wall to Hampton. But so you're taking two different routes, but you get to the same location. And by going different routes, you get more information on the city you're in. And that's exactly what we're doing with these models. Taking two different routes to get a better understanding of what's affecting us. And by taking those two different paths, doing something called asymmetric trend analysis. It's a really fancy way of saying those two squiggly lines are a little different, why are they different? You get a lot of information from those differences. And the final slide is just basically a conclusion that the adoption of modeling and fiscal planning is very important. It's the mechanics behind how fiscal plans work. And if you have any questions on the model,
Thank you, Eric. I know why I went to law school.
I'm not too good at writing, so.
So is that the conclusion of the presentation? Great. Thank you very much to both of you. Is there any questions from the body? Anyone? Yes, Councilor Javana, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for your presentation, Mark. Thank you, Eric, as well. I've sat with you and spoken with you quite a bit on the budget and numbers, I guess I could say. This is a great sales presentation, is what it is. And I like where you're going with it, and I like these graphs and everything. But when I look at City of Quincy Schedule 2A, I see forecasted more revenue coming into the city. And I see budgets going up in price, going up every year. What do you say to the local middle-class people that make $61,000? And how are they going to be able to, when their values of their houses go up, and then they back-end it, and then you get them up again with the tax increase or the fixed costs that we have in the city, for instance, schools. You're always going to need to put money into the schools, probably $2 million, $3 million every year. Fire and police, pretty much this year was $1 million each. Your pensions, health insurance, those are all fixed costs basically. They're primarily 80% of that whole budget is fixed costs.
Yeah, so talking about fixed costs is actually, if you not to get too worried about macroeconomics, there's no such thing as a fixed cost in the long run. So looking in the long run, so in the long run, prices rise. So we're sitting here saying stuff with you downtown is going to be pretty better. That whenever production increases, we have inflation. So good economies have good inflation. Inflation isn't some boogeyman monster that's meant to disrupt value. As production goes up, that's when we see that move up now. So this city does about $3.9 billion in economic activity per year, which is about 2.75% growth since 2000. Think of the 2 recessions we've had since 2000. We're still at a 2.7% growth rate, which means our inflation rate should be about 2.75%, 3%. And that budget's going up a little more than 3% a year. Yeah, just about 3%.
When will that ever end? When will it ever say the people that are weathering the storm, for instance, the people that are out there that are on that fixed costs, those senior citizens that are in those houses that are trying to survive, like my father and in-laws, when do you say to them, hey, listen, you've weathered the storm, you're dealing with the traffic around the city, you're dealing with all these changes that are going on, you're making the impact, you're still staying here in the city. You can take all these graphs, and Lucinda, I totally disagree with her, trying to tax on the levy. I don't believe in that concept. You may be able to do it in Needham, you may be able to do it in Hingham, but not in the city of Quincy, in my personal opinion. How do you feel about that opinion that I just said?
Well, I've been here in the city. I came in 2011 and began working immediately on the 12 budget, on the 13 budget. So this is my sixth process going through. And we've gone from 229 million, 236 million, 248. It was 257, 268, 267.9, and 276.9. Now we're at 287. So I don't see a trend where that's going to stop. I don't see where it's going to flatten out. We have a great deal of the percentage of the budget is people's salaries. Fire, police, teachers. I guess it would tend to go down if those were ever going down, but I don't see union negotiations negotiating lower wages. Those are city residents too. I empathize with anybody on a fixed income, particularly elderly people subject to only what may increase, or people talking about even decreasing Social Security. Very difficult situation. One recognizable fact is that unless you're in a recessionary period, the value of their homes are increasing. At some point, they're no longer homeowners, and perhaps a child buys the house, or they sell the house and go into a more fixed or assisted living facility, hopefully having benefited from the property increases. But we're not here to solve the overall economic problems. That's a factor of capitalism and democracy in America. There's growth, the budgets grow, the federal government, the state government.
In my personal opinion, I believe that the downtown development, all this development that's going across the city, whether it be a condominium being put up, an apartment building put up, is to alleviate the tax burden on the taxpayer. That's my belief, and I'm not going to change that theory that I have based on any type of model that you have. Now, and I understand it from an economical standpoint. However, I would think that model would be more inclined in these affluent, single-family homes in towns that are across the South Shore, or across the Commonwealth, I could say.
Well, the model is a citywide model also. It's not just for any particular economic group or housing group. That's a city budget.
So in turn, basically, you're trying to say to the fixed incomes or the ones that have a low percentage of income going up, hey, listen, maybe it's time for you to sell your house. Is that what you're kind of saying?
No, I would never make an assumption like that.
It's a good time to sell because your value's up in your house. You get a good market value, and you can move on to and downsize. And that's not my theory at all. Because a lot of those families, a lot of those people, they spent some time in the city. They did their time. They're going through all the problems that we're dealing with, rerouting through the city because of traffic concerns. I think it's our duty, or my duty as a council here, to publicly talk about this and tell you that we have to look out for their benefits because they're the ones that put this forward before us, the generation that still lives in that house. They're the ones that paid all those taxes all those years, went through all the hard times through the city, dealing with the snow and ice deficit and all these other FEMA flood maps, and we can go down the line and we can talk about all these. They've weathered the storm, and those are the people that I'm going to represent. The middle class, the $61,000 medium income that we have in the city. I'm going to represent them, and I'm going to say, listen, there has to be a time where we halt, take care of the people that have been doing all this time that have stayed here. Let the downtown development, let this income, let these revenues that you're talking about, these astronomical increases. Okay, let's let's reward these people that are still staying there. Oh, there's going to be a lot more vehicles on the road. Well, what about other avenues of bike infrastructure and all these other, new innovative technology, I guess, throughout the city? I mean, you're on the economical standpoint, and I can see exactly what you guys are doing, and that's your field, and that's your specialist.
That's how we can help. That's what we're.
But I go from a moral standpoint as well. There's a moral standpoint behind this, and I have to represent those people that are having some tough times. And I applaud you guys for coming up here and giving this, but in my personal viewpoint, I think it's a nice sales presentation to get us ready for more bond money that's going to be authorized or come through this body. And I have to tell you that I'm going to be very conservative on that aspect of it, because I just think that we're going down the wrong direction with trying to, I think we're overspending, is what I'm trying to say. I think we're going to get ourselves caught. And you're going to push all those people and all those families that spent generations of time in this city out. You're going to push them more south. And I don't want to see that. And you're going to bring all this new wave of people in here. And I have no problem with that. And I have no problem with bringing new families in here and starting a family and everything. But you also have to understand that there's people that spent their time here for generations. I want to keep them here too. How do we find that balance? How do we find that? Can you
We're trying to keep the credit rating as high as possible.
I know you're trying to keep that credit rating, and I'm trying to push as far as I can the spending. So where do we meet? Where do we have a compromise with, okay, I can understand the council saying this, and we have to kind of understand the taxpayer. We have to keep our credit rating. Where do we minimally keep this credit rating? That's where I'm coming at, Mark.
I respect your position, Counselor. Obviously, that's more your job to do than the Chief Financial Officer's job to do. The one thing I can speak to that you did mention, and I want to say, we're borrowing too much money. There's a specific ratio that says whether you're borrowing too much money or not. We're in fantastic shape in that regard. And the bankers back us up on that. The credit rating agencies back us up on that. Our ratios are among the best in Massachusetts for how much we borrow versus what our total valuation is, which is $12 billion in the city, and versus our budget number. We're below the 6%. They're saying we could go up to 7.5% and not trigger any warning. We're in good shape. So purely economic, purely financial from the city's treasury. That's where my focus is, and we're in great shape that way. So when a CIP plan comes before you next week for funding, the ability for Quincy to afford the investment in those capital assets, fire engines, fire trucks, new schools, roads, the money is there to do it. We need to borrow it, and we're very capable in
I'll leave you with this. I'll leave you with this last phrase. There are wants and there are needs. And I will be in support of any need, but some of the wants I want to hold off. So as long as we need these things, and I think a lot of the things in the capital improvement plan, which is going to be laid out in the next month meeting, I agree with it. They have to be addressed. Police station, fire department, there's some stations that are in bad shape. I agree with those. Roads, sidewalks, we need those things. Those are needs. When we get into being greedy and we want all these extra things, and in my personal opinion, we don't really need those things right now at this point, until this gets developed correctly, until we get the North Quincy in order as well, we balance everything out, then we can start spending a little bit more. And we'll keep your credit rating. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chairwoman. For the record, 15 reasons. Anyone's got control over the air. That would be helpful. Mark, you know, I appreciate what you do as a professional. It's great at what you do. I think more importantly, you're a good man and you're easy to deal with. You know, I've always appreciated being in my seat, you know, having the ability to have that open conversation. And to Eric, you know, nice job on your presentation. I know that this isn't always the ideal setting to give one of those, but I think you did a good job. So I wanted to put that out there. You know, I'm a reflective thinker by nature, so it kind of takes me a while to read something, interpret it, and come back with questions. So I'll do the best that I can on the fly, given the information that should present it. You had mentioned that this is something that the rating agencies want to see, and that, correct me if I'm wrong, but to paraphrase, Powers and Sullivan had also made a valiant effort to say, City of Quincy, you need to formalize your policy.
It's correct. The accounting firm reviews the finances continuously through the year, but the focal point of their work is to produce the audit. They have to do that by law. We have to have our books audited by an independent CPA firm. It's on Powers and Sullivan's audit that the rating agencies base most of their rating. They take the audit report, they analyze the financial statements, and then they conduct the conference call that I spoke of. And they'll question us not only on the audit, financial statements, the questions they have about what we've done in the course of the year, but they also want to see the policies in place guiding us as we go forward. That mainly 50% of the free cash going forward we're going to reserve. We want to see our reserves increased. Right now, we have 13 million that would be credited with if we were judged today. That's 10.2 million in stabilization, 2.8 in free cash as I speak. So we'd be credited with 13 million. They want us baseline, bottom line, between 14 and 16 million. And they want that in case Quincy faces fill in the blank, a hurricane, a tornado, another flood. They want that because that would provide the city with stability. We may get FEMA money down the road, but it provides Quincy with the stability to continue to provide services, keep schools open, assist the elderly, police, continues to do everything. We don't have to keep taking the regular income in that we depend on. We can rely on stabilization. And of course, that fund requires your vote to spend. So it's similar to putting it in the bank. So they just want to see those levels raised up a bit.
So yes to all that, and I think used interchangeably in stabilization versus rainy day fund, right?
Right. Rainy day, obviously, it's not talking about the weather.
Right. So
it's more of the economic output.
So every year we get essentially a management letter.
Yes.
Produced by Powers and Sullivan that says it really soup to nuts. You know, you're strong here, you're weak here, and here's a recommendation. We think you can take today in order to become more efficient as a city. I'm assuming, but I can't recall it offhand, was the idea of having a written policy, which is your proposal there, adopted by the city council, and obviously implemented. Was that in prior management letters or?
No, it was not, because the Powers and Sullivan in the management letter will focus more on internal accounting practices. They'll focus more on the day-to-day activities of the employees as it has to do with how they do their city functions, how finances are administered in the city. It's the rating agency's credit rating report that goes outside the box and talks about putting aside more funds, more of the things, the policies I mentioned tonight. That's more the credit rating agency telling you how you can improve your credit rating, thus lower your interest costs. And Powers and Sullivan reviews that. They'll give us commentary on it, but they're really looking at two different things.
Powers and Sullivan would not view this because I feel
they
like,
will view it, but
no,
they
what
haven't.
I'm saying as an internal control.
That's what Powers and Sullivan will do. They'll look at internal control.
But they won't view any of this.
Put it in the management letter. No, they won't do that.
Okay, all
They can advise us and say that's a great idea and endorse it, but they're looking at it separately.
Mhm. So, just to kind of back up, and I know other folks have some questions, but you spoke about the capital improvement plan, which will have more information, or excuse me, discussion around next week. Talk about a rolling 5-year capital plan. Can you maybe
Correct.
paint some more
It's a new way
perspective?
of looking at it. I think it's a more modern way. The cities are beginning to do it now. The last time we went out in 2011, and I think it was a $24.5 million plan. So instead of taking one snapshot in time and trying to predict all the needs over the next 4 years, and essentially prioritizing those needs over 5 years, and then ask this council to appropriate that money for those needs for 5 years. The new approach, which is endorsed by Hilltop Security, Cindy McNerney, and a more modern way of doing things, is to make a picture of a 5-year plan, theoretically, as the mayor did a few weeks back, but ask for funding for the first year, knowing that it's a rolling plan. Now, things change year to year. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what calamities or not to wish ill on any aspect of city government. But a roof here or there, collapse of a wall, a ladder truck, different horrendous things could happen. It's totally changed the priorities and capital needs. What the plan, the rolling plan allows for is you stop, you fill the emergency, maybe put some things that you were looking at in year 3 or 4 or 5, push those off to year 6, and you move it forward. So we'd be back to you again, probably the same time next year, with a funding request for the second year of the rolling capital plan. But then we're looking out another year down the road.
So I'm just
Year
going
4, year
to,
5.
I'm just going to use round numbers here, because I don't have dollars denominations. I'm going to say $20 million, I think is what's up for consideration.
I think it's a little under 19, that would be general fund
So, I
appropriation.
guess my question is, are we to assume that that $20 million is going to take us from July 1 of 2016, and we won't see another one of these presentations until July of 2000?
I wouldn't want to commit to a calendar date or.
That would be a rolling 5. would it
It
not?
would be a rolling 5, but it doesn't have to be an exact $20 million amount.
No, of course.
$20 million every year. Next year might be $7 million.
Correct.
Next year might be 11.
What I'm saying is not going to be interim asked, or there will be, or I'm just
There
trying
would
to.
be an additional ask the second year, or, maybe early in the third year. Maybe we don't do it late next year. But we're looking 5 years out at a time. Once the appropriation is made for the CIP plan sometime this session, that would be year 1. And then we roll forward.
Don't get me wrong, I don't work in your business, I work in financial business, so I understand it enough, and don't misunderstand me. I know that municipal spending is an essential function of government. It is. I think what Councilor DeBonner and the crosstalk was getting at is, how are we managing that as most efficiently as possible? And ultimately manage the bottom line, which is obviously the taxpayer. I totally understand the sentiment that you expressed, and a lot of it actually back up. And we're in a very unique time where, there's always going to be a need.
Sure, always.
Is it, a want versus need, and how do we prioritize? I think having a 5-year modeling plan gives us all the opportunity to look through the windshield versus the rear view.
On an annual basis.
Correct. So, I can see the legitimacy there. I just also know that, listening to Mr. Mason speak, that, interest rates are going to go up. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. We've seen them kind of create sideways for a while.
And I talked about it,
Borrowing will increase at some point in time over the next
Some
5
point.
years, and that's a fact.
although we've been pretty much hearing that for 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah, I'm not going to speculate that that's going to stay level.
Neither am I.
That's my own opinion. Other question on this too, and you kind of brought it up, to Mr. Walker. when we had this conversation with Cinder, right, I think we all agreed this would be very good to have an open dialogue and keep everybody in the loop in terms of information. You guys speak with them on a more frequent basis, obviously. We meet
Every week.
Right. We meet bi-weekly, right, twice a month. Now it seems like 3 times a week, but traditionally twice a month. So my thought is, as we go in and, view a 20 million, round numbers,
Yeah.
$20 million ask next week, potential for noticeably more in DIF funding. And there's a lot of financial variables in play. I think personally, now that we have numbers to it, because when the capital plan was first presented to us, we didn't have any numbers. When the initial presentation was given, we didn't have any numbers. So now that there's some numbers kind of spoken about, I mean, is it out of the realm of possibility to have Cinder, and I know the timeline's short, so maybe she can't be here in person, but author a memo to the city council saying, based on what was presented over the last couple weeks, here's how it may or may not impact.
Well, I know that Cinder as a banker is not in the practice of giving opinions.
Well, we're not asking for an opinion on the project, we're asking for a numerical interpretation as it relates to the long end of the city's finances.
And through, Cinder had a very heavy hand in the policies. And in the debt policy, she is saying that Quincy should keep within a 6% to 7.5% cap on capital improvement spending on the debt service. We're well within that. In fact, we're the lowest of the 10 communities that we recently compared ourselves to historically. Using the other figure, using the banker's figure of less than 2.5% of total valuation, we're phenomenally low. We're below 2, whereas almost every other city we're usually compared to somewhere between 2 and 2.5. They want you to stay below the 2.5. We're way below it. So by those measures, which is, it's not Cinder personally saying it, it's Cinder showing us what the debt ratio needs to be, and we're clearly way under with the 18, roughly 20 million speaking, CIP debt. We're still way under, and we'll be way under it next year. There's capacity to do more if there was a desire. The ask isn't going to be in that range. We're way below the debt ratio now. We'll remain below the debt ratio. And I did receive an email from Cinder endorsing that we would be under that, understanding that you wanted to see something in writing from her. She did give us an email.
We were speaking about the constituencies he represents, which a lot of it is my constituency. The goal here is to make sure that we're being prudent as humanly possible.
Understood, Council.
So I would assume leading up to next week's meeting, we'll be able to have something saying from the financial advisor, okay, that, we're okay with this.
Yes, I think you'll have that.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. One final question, and then I'm gonna go. When you talk about rating agencies, I feel like debt authorization is one side of the equation. I feel like the other side is revenues, right?
Sure.
My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, was the rating agency maybe a little, was there perception about the city that we're a little lean on our revenues?
A little, what?
Lean?
Lenient?
Lean.
No, revenues are generally flat. The real estate revenues have increased. The local receipts are genuinely flat. We've had some nice increases, excise tax, meals tax. Some of the fees associated with building and construction have had increases. We've had other dips that were explainable and expected, really, because we had programs that drove those fees and revenues up, penalties and interest. Treasurer had a program going after recalcitrant payers that was very successful, very hard on some people that didn't have the funds, but it's not fair to the people paying their taxes if you let people get away with not paying theirs. So we did institute that program, probably the people we got. But the revenues were skyrocketed last year, I think over 3 million this year. They're back more normal, so it looks like a deficit in revenue that we have to fill and eats up the gains in excise tax. So those revenues, the state aid revenue was up a little over $1 million. You know, we're doing fine. It's not.
So when you think
but it's a
about
slight increase.
net new growth, maybe this is a model that's already taken place, I don't know, but.
Yeah, I think we're experiencing mild growth.
Well, as I think about some of the larger construction projects that have been built and coming online and obviously will be contributing to the tax base, that's going to be a new annual inflow of revenue. I think to Council DeBona's point, it's what you do with that net new revenue that will essentially tell you where you'll end up come tax time.
You'll have more to say on that than I would.
Well, I guess you're absolutely right, but I mean, as we consider, projected new revenues coming off of these properties, I mean, what's kind of the thought around that? Is there a number associated with it?
Well,
What does that mean?
there's projected revenue to increase through the DIF district, certainly.
I'm talking outside of downtown.
Well, that would have to be in development, commercial development, and increasing what the property tax base is on both commercial and residential. We hope to do a better job in the commercial development. Increase in commercial valuations takes that portion of the pie away from residential.
Right.
You don't get that residential burden shift with increased commercial development. But I think we've heard a lot of the planning people speak to that end, that first is the residential investment, followed by the commercials.
I guess I'm just trying to figure out how to articulate my question.
I don't know that I have an answer for it.
Right, so if you're taking in new money off new residential development, say for example, the Deco apartment and Avalon Bay project and some of the other ones that are coming online, and you're basically applying it to your already existing budget and or expenditures, you're not spending additional money, which I know is kind of fancy.
No, it's just going into the general fund. It's just general tax revenue. It's not being set aside, other than the DIF district is accounted for.
Right, but it all comes down to a function of spending, right? Revenues in versus spending actually creates the reality of where you're at in your rent.
Right, we don't design anything to spend more than we take in. And hope to experience surpluses going forward.
Well, thank you for the time, Mark, appreciate it.
Sure, Councilman.
Thank you, Madam President, and I'll be very quick. Again, I share my colleagues' commitment and also, I guess, wonder around specifically the timeliness of certain spending at certain times and how particularly some of the taxpayers I feel about that in particular. I'm particularly impressed now with what I refer to now as the DeBona methodology in terms of the want versus need. I think that's a very good kind of question, particularly that we need to ask in our roles specifically as we continue on with the budget process. But in all of that, the one thing I want to be very careful is I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater either. And I think that one of the real hits to taxpayers that I've noticed over a significant amount of time as a taxpayer, never mind as a city councilor, but when we have erratic swings in the levy, that's one of the issues that creates the greatest amount of distress. When people see tremendous jumps that they experience in their tax bills and other things, that's when they feel it specifically the most. And a lot of times, those erratic swings in the levy have occurred because of the very reason that we don't have these policies in place, quite honestly. And I think that, that the whole concept of actually, what I'm understanding this correctly, and I think it could be better understood, quite honestly, but if I'm understanding it correctly, for example, these policies are going to impact that budget process where you're definitely going to lay out annually the appropriation to stabilization, for example, within that budget process in order to build that stabilization, because then in those situations when something unpredictable happens or different things, you're not simply stuck to then just relying on your levy. And right now, we know we have significant amounts of levy capacity, and you could have a significant tax levy swing on people. I think that the other example is we need to address the so-called unfunded liabilities like the OPEB, because if not,
We're not alone with it.
we're not alone, but we need to deal with it because, again, talk about difficulties down the road in terms of trying to stay even at all in relation to that. The costs to the taxpayers are going to be absolutely incredible. I think most of the people, when they raise questions about the taxation, I think that want and need thing is a very real way that people do look at it. And I think that the policies really are, particularly if we're talking about stabilization and OPEB and those things, we're really talking about need in a very real way, and in a way of having policies in place that are dealing with the fiscal realities that we're facing. So again, I just want to be clear that the whole issue around controlling the taxes, and I think, Councilor Crowell as well has made very good points, and we have to look at this specifically, from the development side, the production of revenue, and all of those different things. But, and I can't, the financial policy component that you're laying out here, to me, is sound. And I think long overdue in many respects.
And you'll get these fully written out policies within the next day.
I think something to that effect that would be helpful, and again, I do think that those things are good conservative budget practices, quite honestly.
I agree with the council. They're not drawn from thin air. They're taken from the best practices of cities with AAA.
It's moving away from the pay-as-you-go kind of perspective on these things, right? We're talking about
Right.
how
We're
to-
on pay-as-you-go in many things now.
Right.
We need to increase the contributions rate.
And in long term, that will have benefit to you.
That'll tremendously benefit the city in a lot of different things.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Anyone else?
All right, thank you very much, Mark. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Eric. Thank you. Item number 2, Madam Clerk.
Number 2, 2016-155, appropriation for $1 million.
All right, motion to waive the reading. Item 2 will be referred to finance and advertise. Thank you. Item number 3, Madam Clerk.
Number 3 is 2016-156, an appropriation of $49,765.
Motion to waive the reading. I'm sorry, say that again. Oh, okay. Motion to approve, made by Councilor Palmucci, seconded by Councilor Kroll. Discussion? All right, seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilor King.
Yes.
Councilor Crowe.
Yes.
Councilor DeBon.
Yes.
Councilor King.
Yes.
Councilor Harris.
Yes.
Councilor LaForest. Councilor Leeang.
Yes.
Councilor Palmucci.
Yes.
Okay. President Hughes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
I know.
Madam President,
Yes.
I mean, it's my understanding that that vote, that money will be used for Mr. Walker to give tours dressed up in costume around. For the record, yeah. Legislative intent, I want to make sure that that's why I voted for it. I don't know, I can't keep.
It will become part of the record. Item number 4, Madam.
Item number 4, 2016-157, ordinance amending section 6.04 dog leash or restraint on leash.
Motion, please. Motion to waive the reading. And on motion.
Yes, Councilor Barnes.
Thank you. So this is the latest iteration of our off-leash dog. To help us establish a dog park, we're working with the mayor's office, and the animal shelter, with this unit, to grant $250,000 for the dog. One of the stipulations is that we allow, when the person applies for grants, that we allow in parks for dogs to be off leash. Today's ordinances prohibit dogs being off leash, so it's a little chicken in. We've dumped out all the language to basically say we'll allow dogs off leash at areas to be designated by the Park and Rec Board. rules to be made for these dog parks in the park report. I think it's better to have a secondary document as to what the park rules are versus it being in an ordinance. I just think that's a better policy for us. So we've changed it, really minimized the language. It will be handled by the Park Recreation Board. There is not a designated location to date. We're looking at some open space areas for this opportunity. So at this point, we're going to put in committee, schedule a public hearing for that June 20th. In addition, because we have an ordinance committee meeting that night, we won't have a discussion, I think, on this. We will open the public hearing. Is that what we're going to do? June 20th public hearing? Okay, so we'll do June 20th public hearing, because we're coming back to the full ordinance committee anyways.
To refer to ordinance.
So refer to ordinance, schedule for public hearing, send out to advertising, messages to that.
Okay, there you go. Thank you, Councilor LaForest. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Item number 5 on the agenda, 2016-158.
Okay, motion to waive the reading and all right. Motion made by Councilor Kroll, seconded by Councilor Finn. On the motion.
Councilor King.
Yes.
Councilor Crowe.
Yes.
Councilor Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilor Finn.
Yes.
Councilor Harris.
Yes.
Councilor LaForest.
Yes.
Councilor Leeang.
Yes.
Councilor Calhoun.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
Next on the agenda is number 6, 2016-159, gift for $50.
All right, motion by Councilor Kroll, seconded by Councilor Finn. On the motion.
Councilor King.
Yes.
Councilor Crowe.
Yes.
Councilor Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilor Finn.
Yes.
Councilor Harris.
Yes.
Councilor LaForest.
Yes.
Councilor Leeang.
Yes.
Councilor Calhoun.
Yes.
Councilor Hughes.
Yes.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is 2016-160, a gift for $3,420.
Motion by Councilor Kroll, seconded by Councilor Finn. On the motion, Madam Clerk.
Councilor King.
Yes.
Councilor Crowe. Councilor Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilor Finn.
Yes.
Councilor Harris.
Yes.
Councilor LaForest.
Yes.
Councilor Leeang.
Yes.
Councilor Calhoun.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
Next on the agenda, number 8, 2016-161, a gift for $4,000 for various donors to the
Motion by Councilor Kroll, seconded by Councilor Finn. On the motion, Madam Clerk.
Councilor King.
Yes.
Councilor Crowe. Councilor Finn.
Yes.
Councilor Harris.
Yes.
Councilor LaForest.
Yes.
Councilor Leeang.
Yes.
Councilor Calhoun.
No.
President Hughes.
Yes.
8 members. Next on the agenda, number 9, 2016-162, a resolve for administration to review and evaluate residential tax exemption. Councilor Hughes.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Clerk. I will motion to waive the reading. This is something I wanted to put forth in front of the body this evening to ask the administration to review and evaluate a residential tax exemption that some communities do. I was made aware of it by a constituent who is in my ward, whose son lived in another community that does this. And it does offer some tax relief for folks who live in their homes. So owner-occupied residences do get a tax exemption or a quote discount on their residential taxes to help with the obvious high cost of paying taxes. And where we're talking about this now and talking about being stewards of really the city, but also trying to minimize the tax burden on folks, particularly in Quincy, where we've had
a great deal of folks on a fixed income. There are families who've lived here for many, many years, that own their home for a long time. Again, a lot of senior citizens in our community, and this is something that may help alleviate some of their tax burden. And we're also a community with a lot of non-owner occupied residences. I don't know where I stand on this or where the others stand. I do think it's definitely worthwhile and something that I think we owe it to our constituents to ask the administration to take a look at. And I applaud the administration. When I did discuss this with them, they were happy to take a look at this and see if this is something that our community might benefit from, if it's something that is feasible for us. And I would just urge my colleagues this evening to join me in supporting this resolution, again, to ask the administration to look into the benefits of something like this in a community like ours. And I know I reached out to Council Calhoun, who was interested in joining this resolution as well. Again, I don't know where to what end this will lead, or even if I believe that this is a good idea, but I think it's something that we owe it to our constituents to take a look at, particularly at this time when we're talking about tax burden and talking about, again, folks on a fixed income recovering from 2 recessions. Just a difficult time, obviously, on all of us, but something that we owe it to folks to take a look at. So I just ask my colleagues to pass this. Council Finn, yes.
Thank you, Madam President. But just to be clear, I want to make certain, because this is, all you're asking for is an analysis at this
Correct.
point.
Yes.
And because there's certain things within it that raise certain questions, particularly regarding the unintended consequences of this particular type of policy. So I'll support simply asking, but it's clear cut that someone would have to come back with an order to adopt this if we were going to do that. And, so again, if the it's simply to analyze and get back to us, because it does seem to me that there's other issues that may have the unintended consequence, specifically, as it relates to significant rental property and the issue that people are already having in Quincy around affordable housing, because most of these would be passed on, quite honestly, to them. So again, I'll support the analysis, but we want to make sure we proceed cautiously if we're going to actually consider it.
No, I couldn't agree more, Councilor Finn. I feel as though this is going to keep responding back with this conversation, but it's something that I have great concerns about as well. This is something that a resident reached out to me, who's very passionate about. I know another council president in the community that does this. I reached out to him, and we started a dialogue about it. I agree with you.
Well, I think
it is fraught with different traps and different pros and cons. So, but I think it's worthwhile to ask the administration to take a look. Thank you. Council Calhoun.
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to co-sponsor this with you, Madam President. I think the points you made, anything we can do in terms of easing the burden on taxpayers, we should take a look at. So what the purpose of this is to have a discussion, have the administration take a look at it, see what the fiscal impact, see what who would be impacted, who would benefit, who would be negatively impacted by this. So take a look at it, see whether or not it's something that we want to pursue further, see whether or not it's a policy that we think makes sense for Quincy. But as they say, there's no bad ideas except for the ones you don't share. So I think this is, while I'm not sure if this is the right direction to head in, it's certainly worth considering, worth having a discussion, and worth getting some additional information on to see if it isn't something that we can do to help ease the tax burden on the residents within the city. So I'm happy to support it.
Okay. Is that a motion?
Yeah, did you move it? No,
Okay, motion to approve, seconded by Councilor Liang. On the motion, anyone else wishing to speak? All right, so now Madam Clerk, we call the roll.
Council King.
Yes.
Council Crowe. Council Dwight.
Yes.
Council King.
Yes.
Council Hannah.
Yes.
Council LaFarge.
Yes.
Council Liang.
Yes.
Council Calhoun.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
9 members.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up, Clerk, is the approval of previous meeting minutes. We have the May 23rd minutes, motion approved made by Council Kroll, seconded by Council Devon. Motion, all those in favor? Aye. Aye, great, the ayes have it. Minutes are adopted. Communications and reports from the mayor, other city officers, and city boards. Madam Clerk.
Well, I have a couple of things here. I have some traffic requests, and I have the unfinished business from last week.
Very well. Unfinished business. So, just we need to do.
This is 2016-136, conveyance of land to the MBTA in the vicinity of Lawrence, Seville Street, and City Hall for municipal purposes.
Right. Thank you.
I believe,
Yes.
Paul Hines is here.
Yes, Paul Hines. Yep. Just as a way to catch up, this was, that was on our last agenda. We had tabled it for this evening because there was no one to speak on the matter at the last council meeting. But Paul Hines is here.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, councilors. I would like to begin by apologizing for that occurrence at the last meeting. That was my fault, my lack of communication, and I apologize to you for that. But we should address it tonight. It's actually a fairly simple matter. A little back history on it. Back in the late 60s, early 70s, when the MBTA was planning to come through Quincy, the city of Quincy and the MBTA entered into a land swap agreement, memorandum to memorialize different land conveyances between the two divisions of the government. And that agreement never made it to record at the Registry of Deeds. And then in the mid-70s to 77, the city of Quincy undertook the building of the City Hall Annex. And then about 1979, 1980 or so, they began to work on the Stop and Shop building. It was for the Department of Education building. And there were some leases and air right issues with the T. And they discovered the error from the early 70s that agreement had never gone to record. So the agreement went to record, but unfortunately at that point in time, we'd already built the building on the land we just gave to the T. So the City Hall Annex, parking in the vicinity of it, there's issues that we built on MBTA land. We still park on MBTA land. The passageway that follows the full length of the MBTA tracks out to the Stop and Shop garage and beyond is owned by the T. It is not regularly maintained well. The city of Quincy just put in security cameras and high efficiency lighting and LED lighting to make it more safe for pedestrians at night. But we would like to step up the game on the maintenance of it. In addition, the area between the city hall parking and the other city employees parking that's actually owned by the T out by the station, it's kind of a no man's land in there. It's really, it's not maintained well, admittedly, by the T. There's some dangerous issues with grade differences and cracked sidewalks and such. And there's some jurisdictional issues on who's got the authority to enforce the laws and keep the peace in the area. Additionally, next to the annex, there's a large portion of land that's slated to be part of the Alice Green Park, which is owned by the MBTA. So through the mayor's office and at his direction, been working with Mark Boyle and Frank Trematosi and others through the T, Mike Sedgwick and others, and we've come to an agreement on this conveyance. And basically, phenomenal consideration. The T is going to convey this land over to the city, which will allow us for the maintenance of it and the better policing of it, and certainly allow us to go forward with the Adams Green Park. Now, my budget in our department, isn't as robust as the planning of the other guys, so I don't have PowerPoint constraints here. But I did take the liberty of color coding the conveyance plan. So the city of Quincy will be obtaining through conveyance for $1 from the MBTA everything that's shown here in green. And just for way of reference, the orange square down here is the Stop and Shop garage. So you see that the green line goes up to Granite Street. That portion that's beneath the garage is currently leased to Stop and Shop for the garage, but the underlying fee is now owned by the T and will become the city of Quincy property. The more significant issues is down in here. This is the City Hall annex and his town hall. So this is the stripping back where parking occurs. And in this area, there's city parking. And then this area that's part of the Adams Green. And this is the current bus shelter and all the areas around it. So the bus shelter will remain with the T, but the surrounding areas will be coming to the city. This is the Monroe Building. We all know the city clerk was temporarily located. There's a dentist office here now. And this is an old public way called Savile Street, which is still city-owned, and that's the majority of pedestrian traffic between the T and President's Place and Hancock Street travel there. This portion of land is fortunately one of the parcels that the city did get when they finally recorded that. This was formerly owned by the T. So the city will become controlling of all of the land surrounding City Hall and the Adams Green Park. So the terms of the agreement have been negotiated. It's basically the city's going to take it on. It will be the city's responsibility to maintain it going forward and to improve it as part of the Adams Green project. And the conveyance is for nominal consideration of $1. So at the request of the mayor, I respectfully ask that you allow the mayor to enter into this agreement and accept the conveyance of the land from the MBTA.
All right, thank you. I know Councilor Lane has a question.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Quick question for the land and the space and how it's being maintained right now. So as of right now, the
Sorry,
No, it's okay. I'll speed up a little bit. So the area right now, the land is owned by the MBTA, and we're going to take it over, maintain it. But is the MBTA still going to use any of that property at all, or have it, serve any of its, let's say, customers per se? So what the end to that question is, are they going to be paying anything to us for using that space if we take it over to maintain it?
The area that lies between the Monroe Building and the Quincy Center Station is MBTA land, but the city employees park there during the day by agreement. That land will not be affected by this. What's affected by this is where the city appointees, the mayor's office, the council office, parks behind the glass building. That's what's affected, this parking portion. None of this would be public parking for the MBTA. It's not out. It will not be going forward. Many of you have done it, I'm sure all of you have done it. You've got to squeeze through 2 rows of cars to get to the back parking lot here. Those cars are MBTA employees who were forced to park there when the garage was closed down because of its structural issues. So the agreement does allow those 6 or 8 spaces to remain for employees of the T whilst on time of working for the T. But the underlying land would belong to the city. And then the hope is that, the upgrade of the street, the maintaining of it, the cleaning of it can go forward, even though they're parking there. And then later on, if and when, and we hope soon, the Quincy Center redevelopment of the station happens, then this parking could be reaccommodated in the garage and wherever, and hopefully be removed from this site permanently.
Okay, so if and when those spaces actually get moved, and the MBTA employees will be using spots that are designated to the MBTA, then we can open up those spots, let's say, for public use, because I know parking is I think my fellow councilor Cole said it earlier, parking is a huge issue that we have in the city right now. So in those parking spaces, somewhere down the pipe when they can open them up and move those MBTA spots somewhere else, we can then open that up to public parking. Right?
In theory, that could happen, yes. It all depends upon the physical location of the new garage and stuff. This, access to it, but in theory, yes, that can certainly happen if the public parking is needed at the time.
Okay, and if we don't ever, let's say, move those MBTA spots out of the way and we allow them
That's
to,
right.
if we don't ever redesignate those MBTA parking spaces and we continue to allow them to use those parking spaces for their employees, will we ever set up some sort of plan with them to then pay for those spots to use them?
No, we would not be paying them. They would not be paying us to use the space if they're giving us the land. And then, some could say there's some significant value to it. But it is hopefully a short-term solution for their employees. But the bigger issue is to get the Adams Green authorized on the land that is currently being built on.
That was all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion made by Councilor Forrest.
Motion made by Councilor Forrest, seconded by Councilor Harris. If you would, anything further from anyone? No. All right, seeing nothing, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Yes.
Councilor Crowe. Yes. Councilor Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilor Finn.
Yes.
Councilor Harris.
Yes.
Councilor Forrest.
Yes.
Councilor Leeang.
Yes.
Councilor Calmucci.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
Nine ayes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all, sorry. Okay. And Madam Clerk, we have traffic requests, correct?
Yes, I do. I move traffic request to be referred to ordinance committee for advertising in Ward 1, Council LaFarge, added handicapped parking at 20 Figurehead Lane, number 2, Ward 4, Council Calhoun, until I say different. Add stop sign on Rogers Street, southeast bound intersection with all place. Add do not enter on Rogers Street 8 feet northeast of Willard Street from 4 to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. Remove do not enter on Harris Street, westbound intersected with Quarry Street from Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. Add do not enter to Cross Street, westbound intersecting with Common Street, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Add do not enter to Cross Street, eastbound intersecting with Burnsbrook Parkway, Monday through Friday.
There's a motion with the, okay.
3 to 6 p.m. Add do not enter on Jeanette Street, westbound intersecting with Common Street from Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Add do not enter on Hilltop Street, westbound intersecting with Common Street from Monday to Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Add do not enter on Hilltop Street, eastbound intersecting with Burnsbrook Parkway from Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. Add do not enter on Jeanette Street, eastbound intersecting with Burnsbrook Parkway from Monday to Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. Add do not enter on Dayton Street, northbound intersecting with Burnsbrook Parkway from Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. Remove do not enter on Common Street, westbound intersecting with Adams Street from Monday through Friday to 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. Remove do not enter on Common Street, eastbound intersecting with Quarry Street from Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. Remove do not enter on Common Street, westbound intersecting with Quarry Street, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9, 4 to 6 p.m. Add do not enter on Redding Street, westbound intersecting with Common Street, from Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Add do not enter on Redding Street, southbound intersecting with Burnsbrook Parkway, Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. Remove do not enter on Broken Ave, westbound intersecting with Quarry Street, from Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. Ward 6, Councilor Harris, add a handicap parking at 25 Colorado Road.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Again, those rules go to ordinance for advertising. Thank you. Reports of committees. Okay, Councilor Forrest.
Get along with. So one, I will say we had a council order, well, let's start with traffic. So we have council order 2016-143 in Ward 1 to add handicap parking at 59 Marymount Road. I move positive recommendation.
Positive recommendation, motion made by Councilor Forrest, seconded by Councilor Liang. On the motion, Madam Clerk.
Councilor King.
Yes.
Councilor Crowe.
Yes.
Councilor Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilor Finn.
Yes.
Councilor Harris. Councilor Forrest.
Yes.
Councilor Wade.
Yes.
Councilor Calhoun.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
Nine members.
Okay, council order 2016-144 adds stop sign on in Ward 1, add stop sign on Manor Ave southbound by the fire station intersection with C Street. I move positive recommendation.
Motion made by Councilor Forrest, seconded by Councilor Liang. On the motion, Madam Clerk.
Councilor King.
Yes.
Councilor Crowe. Councilor Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilor Finn.
Yes.
Councilor Harris.
Yes.
Councilor Forrest.
Yes.
Councilor Liang.
Yes.
Councilor Calhoun.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
Nine members.
Council order 2016-145, also in Ward 1, to add a no left turn on Palmer Street southbound into the first Snug Harbor School parking lot. I move positive recommendation.
Motion made by Councilor Forrest, seconded by Councilor Liang. On the motion, Madam Clerk.
Councilor King.
Yes.
Councilor Crowe. Councilor Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilor Finn. Councilor Harris.
Yes.
Councilor Forrest.
Yes.
Councilor Liang.
Yes.
Councilor Calhoun.
Yes.
President Hughes. Nine members.
Just on that one on the motion, we have a neighborhood be relative to traffic flow patterns at Smith Harbor School. The meeting is June 16th at 6:30, so we did just vote this sign change. We'll be explaining that. The mailing has gone out to an expanded area. Okay, next up in Ward 2, Council Order 2016-146, to add a stop sign on Bradford Street eastbound intersecting with Madison Ave. I move a positive recommendation.
Right, motion made by Councilor Forrest, second by Councilor Lang, on the motion,
Council King.
Yes.
Council Crowe. Yes. Council DeBon.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Harris.
Yes.
Council LaFors.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
yes.
Council Calhoun.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
Okay, and also in Ward 3, Council Order 2016-147, added no parking on the north side of West Swan Street from Evans Street to Montclair Ave. I move a positive recommendation.
Motion made by Councilor Forrest, second by Councilor Liang, on the motion.
Council King.
Yes.
Council Crowe.
Yes.
Council DeBon.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Harris.
Yes.
Council LaFors.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
Yes.
Council Calhoun.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
Okay, last one, Council Order in Ward 5, Council Order 2016-148, to add a handicap parking sign at 191 Fenno Street. I move a positive recommendation.
Motion made by Councilor Forrest, second by Councilor Liang, on the motion.
Council King.
Yes.
Council Crowe.
Yes.
Council DeBon.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Harris.
Yes.
Council LaFors.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
Yes.
Council Calhoun.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
Very much.
Thank you.
Okay, also, Ordinance Committee held a meeting this evening relative to Council Order 2016-133, Urban Revitalization Development Plan Amendment Number 4. That matter has been continued to June 20th. We also have a public hearing on June 20th.
Thank you very
So
much.
that matter is open. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Forrest. Councilor Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'd like to take out of Finance Committee, Council Order 2016-135, which is the appropriation for $4,240,000 from the Woodwood School for Girls Civil Judgment and Solicitor
I
Timmons.
believe Solicitor Timmons is here to address the Woodwood School judgment if there are questions. Are you moving to approve?
Folks have to move approval on both sides.
Okay, motion approved, made by Councilor Crowe, seconded by Councilor Calucci. Is on the motion, anyone wishing to speak? All right, seeing no one, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Council King.
Yes.
Council Crowe.
Yes.
Council DeBon.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Harris.
Yes.
Council LaFors.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
Yes.
Council Calhoun.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes. Thank you. All right, presentation, petitions, memorials, and remonstrance. Any? Motions, orders, and resolutions. Scheduling of committee meetings and public hearings. Okay, let's do ordinance.
I think we're on for June 20th. June 20th, I'll do 6:30. We have a public hearing at 6. Public hearings need to be at 6.
Yes.
Do we want to do the public hearing on the dog? Does that require a public hearing? Okay, do you want to do 5:55? Yeah. I mean, I don't want to kind of get that discussion rolling. I mean, we're right at 6:30. I know it is. We'll do 6:30. I don't anticipate a large dog park hearing. But I feel like we should knock that off that night versus putting it on the last agenda. I don't know we'll have a date available. So, no. So the 20th will be an ordinance committee meeting. So public hearing followed ordinance committee meeting. So let's schedule a public hearing for the dog park. That's required. All right, so let's go with 5:55 on the dog park. I know it's early. We'll be just think the other one's gonna take a lot of time. But we'll make sure we get the committee members here. I know it's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor LaForest. I do want to mention briefly, Wednesday evening, June 8th, I know the clerk of committees emailed and Councilor Kroll and I spoke about this, that we will be having a special city council meeting at 7:30. It's scheduled for 7:30, following the finance committee meeting that is scheduled already. And I believe that there was some documentation sent out as to why we would be doing a special meeting, and just wanted to highlight that for folks here in the well, if there are any questions or any.
Just as, sorry.
Councilor Crowe.
With respect to the finance, just in case there's additional questions leading up to, I know that she sent around an email, which is the point that the auditor is, she's out of town, but has access to email, and we'll be back come Wednesday. So if you had any questions or yearning for any information not included in that packet that I sent everyone, which I think is pretty substantive, but if you need such, you can communicate with her through email. And just we have traffic and parking, public works, fire, and then we'll speak through the proposed ratings for Wednesday evening. And then we're going to come back next on the 13th, right? Finance committee meeting for the proposed capital improvement plan, which obviously the information has been handed out. And that rests in committee right now. So hopefully you have those 2 days on this calendar. And then the way I think we'll proceed is we have some other financial items that we can button up for the last council meeting on the 27th.
Correct.
So that's just kind of process flow that I interpret. So hopefully that works for everybody. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
All right, thank you, Councilor Crowe. Councilor Page.
Could I just have focus on 27th? I have nothing on my calendar for the 27th. We have a council meeting, our planning.
We're doing a council meeting, that will be our last council meeting before the recess, before the summer recess.
That's when we bump from the 20th.
That's correct, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, I just want to remind folks that Saturday is Flag Day. Looking at the old cameras there. Flag Day parade, Saturday evening. We're all very excited. I know everybody's excited to celebrate Flag Day. So we'll see everybody here and everybody at home Saturday evening. Parade is kicking off at 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock. Thank you, Jimmy Gibby. 7 o'clock. And our very own Joe Shea will be the Grand Marshal. So, looking forward to that, and would look forward to a motion to adjourn. All right, from Councilor Liang. All those in favor? Aye. Great. Motion adjourned. Thank you.